A, meeting opening. A1, call to order. A2, adoption of the agenda. Are there any consent agenda items that a board member would like to have discussed as an action item? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion that the governing board adopt the meeting agenda? Thank you, Ms. Ocampo.
I would like to second.
Thank you, Mr. Conchos. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. B, executive session. B1, call for executive session. Call for motion that the governing board enter into executive session. Thank you, Mr. Ocampo. Any second?
Second.
Mr. Conchos. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right, here we go. Okay, C, reconvene. C1, Pledge of Allegiance. All right, move to D, public comment. D1, public comment, and we have no public comments this evening. E, consent agenda. E1, approval of consent agenda items. Administration recommends the governing board approve consent agenda items. Consent agenda items are E2, payroll and expense vouchers. E3, gifts and donation. E4, CSA for RO Health. E5, innovation partnership. E6, CSA for Canyon Security and Specialists and Consulting. E7, personnel actions. E8, in-person return prep day. E9, Alhambra Elementary online learning for grades K8 name change. Call for motion that the governing board approves consent agenda items E1 through E9.
Call for approval of the consent agenda items E1, E2 through A. Vouchers, the donations, contract services, partnership, specialists.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I just want to say thank you to the folks who have given donations and even various donors that are in the agenda items. I really appreciate your generous contributions. That's it.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Right. Go to F, human resources. F1, personnel actions, rehire for the 2021-2022 year. The administration recommends the governing board approve the submitted 21-22 rehire list. Call for a motion that the governing board approves the personnel actions rehire for 21-22.
That we accept the personnel.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, I'm abstaining from this for potential conflict of interest.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, G, business services. G1, adoption of resolutions to authorize the issuance and sale of school improvement bonds. Administration recommends that the governing board consider, and if deemed advisable, to adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of school improvement bonds of the district. Formal bond action is requested to begin phase 3 of issuance and sale of Class B capital bonds that were approved by the voters in the November 2017 election. The voters approved a total issuance and sale of $45 million. Bond repayment is a repayment of debt generally paid annually over a 20-year repayment period. The bond debt is guaranteed to be repaid by property tax revenues. With this third phase of issuance, we are requesting board approval to issue and sell up to 15 million of bonds. The sale will likely happen in April 2021. Funds should be available by May 2021 with the Maricopa County Treasurer. Thank you, Ms. Bilyeu.
Good evening, President O'Neill, friends, Governing Board, and Mr. Islas. We are pleased to have Mr. Mark Reeder, Managing Director with Stiefel, to provide more information regarding this agenda item.
Thank you very much, Madam President, members of the board. Good evening. We have a little PowerPoint presentation. I think you have a hard copy in front of you. We're gonna, sure if it's gonna come up on the screen. I'll take you to page 2, Madam President, members of the board. It's been my privilege to represent your district over the past several years, including your successful bond election, which, as you know, happened in 2017. And we, in connection with that successful bond election for your capital improvement projects, we've been your investment bank, your underwriter, and we've worked very closely with staff in connection with putting together the sale of bonds for your district. This will be our third sale, as mentioned, and I'm going to walk you through some details. On page 2 here, if you see the graph, it's a little busy, but on the right-hand side where that red bar is, the red bar is essentially your tax base. And good news for the district, your tax base is growing. That's always good. You can see over the years that it's had its ups and downs. As you know, the Grand Canyon University property tax situation, in which several millions of dollars of their property went off the rolls because they converted to a nonprofit, if you remember very, very clearly. And so in connection with the issuance of bonds, that property tax base is really important to us. You can see that you've recovered from that. And this year, our property tax base is up about 5% on the right-hand side on the red bar. So we want to just share with you the all in all pretty good news relative to the stabilization of your tax base and your major taxpayers. On page 3, we just broke out the components of your tax base. You can see on the left-hand side on page 3, you're still largely a commercial tax base. So when we sell bonds, the commercial and industrial properties within the boundaries of your district are paying a fairly good chunk of the property taxes. You can see our residential property, both owner occupied and rental. And you can see that those are also up this year over last year. So more good news. The pie chart down below just breaks out kind of the components. And for every tax dollar your district levies, the types of property classes that pay their fair share, their percentage. So we just wanted to give you that brief background on your tax base. All in all, good news. On page 4, I know some of you were on the board over the last couple of years. These are our bond sales. On page 4, we issued $14.2 million in 2017 or May of 18. And then August of 19, we came back and issued about $13.7 million. It's my understanding your district has put that money to work, made some pretty significant building improvements, some gymnasium improvements. And so good job on that. And the sale we're talking about this evening is the final amount of your authorization from 2017. We've got 15 million left. And we're, as mentioned, we're going to go ahead and initiate the process of selling those bonds for your district so that the money can be deposited and then construction contracts awarded here as soon as you can. Page 5 is our various property taxes of the Alhambra Elementary School District. On the right-hand side, we've broken them out for you. Shows you the 2021. The blue line down below is the secondary property tax rate relative to the repayment of your general obligation bonds. And we're going to focus on that this evening because, as you know, when we sell bonds, we levy a secondary property tax, the property taxes of which repay the bonds. So that's the blue line. And then we have your override in there. We have your primary property tax levy in there. And the green line is your total tax rate for your district per $100 of net limited assessed value. We know you're working on your 21-22 budget, and all those tax rates will be established really in the next 90 days or so. So we want to just kind of share with you good news for this year. Over last year, you were down about 50 cents per 100. So good news on that. Page 6. So we've been working very closely with staff. We appreciate their hard work. And on page 6, there's a fair amount of math here, but you can see in column 2 is our property tax base, our net limited assessed value. You can see on column 3 and 4, our debt service, which is currently about 2.1 million going into next budget year. You can see the current secondary tax rate to repay those bonds, which this year is 58 cents. I just shared that with you. That was that blue line. So we're working closely with staff, and we've structured the $15 million transaction in column 5 and 6, such that we get to column 7, which is roughly about 3 million of debt service. And you can see in column 8 what our projection of your secondary tax rate will be over the coming years after the issuance of our 15 million. So next year at the moment, this will change a little bit. We'll work closely with staff on this. We're projecting about 82 cents in column 8 there. Column 9 is the tax rate that we shared with our voters, with your voters. And you can see there, for example, for next budget year or this budget year, we had projected 90 cents and we came in at 58. For budget year 21-22, we told the voters it would be about 90 cents. Looks like we're going to come in about 82 cents. So we know that's very important to your district. That's what we told voters. And that's what we want to work extremely hard to make sure that we come in below that secondary tax rate that we shared with the voters. The big variable there is your tax base, which we were managing our way through. Now that we see some stabilization and a continued improvement in our economy, we think we're going to be in really good shape relative to what we had shared with voters versus what it's actually going to be. On page 7, as you all know, maybe the only good thing about COVID is it resulted in the interest rate market being the lowest in our history. As you all know, the mortgage market's very, very low, and the interest rates in the municipal bond market, the market that we're going to access, is at all-time historical lows. You can see on page 8 that green line shows you where current rates are now versus the 10-year history. So we're sure hoping to get you all in the 2% money range. Bear with us. And, you know, high 2%, I suppose if rates were to move on, it's maybe low 3%, but we're going to work real hard to drive that interest rate down for you. So I just wanted to give you that perspective. Page 9 is another index of interest rates on the right-hand side versus where rates have been over the last 20 years. So on the right-hand side, you can see kind of where we're at from a historical perspective, but very, very strong. Page 10, you have a resolution in front of you. Mr. Jim Giel is here. Jim is with the law firm of Gus Rosenfeld. He represents the district as your bond attorney. But Jim has prepared a resolution that would, with your approval tonight, would authorize the issuance of $15 million as mentioned. that would delegate the authority to staff to work closely with all of us to move forward and complete all the paperwork and take all necessary actions to move forward accordingly. Page 11, and I'm glad to have Jim come up when I'm done relative to the resolution. And then on page 11, this is our calendar. Tonight, we're in front of the board. And as indicated, and as Mandy mentioned, we're going to be in a position to probably market the bonds the week of April 19th, the week of April 26th. We have our credit rating agency calls next week with the district, so we're going to work real hard to get the best possible credit rating for the district. We're going to price the bonds April 26th, and we expect to have the money deposited with the county treasurer on your behalf by mid-May. So I know that was pretty fast, Madam President. Hope that was helpful, and I'm glad to answer any questions that the board might have. Very much.
Thank you for going over this and explaining everything to us. Board, do you have any questions? Guess not. Thank you so
No,
much.
Yes. I don't remember what we're going to use this $15 million for. I don't think that's your,
No.
realize that you're not the one to answer that, but
So yeah, thank you for the question, Ms. Diocampo. So the district has plans to construct another gymnasium at the, and you may have heard of that at the Valencia and Global Academy and Alternative Learning Center campus that they share. And then the district is also researching out some additional classroom spaces at the Westwood campus for needs there. And then also some just general renovation projects across the district that are needed.
Thank you. Ms. Billiou, is anybody else coming to speak?
Barring your questions, that concludes this portion of the meeting. If you have questions for legal.
We're good. Thank you so much. Okay. I call for a motion that the governing board consider and if deemed advisable to adopt a resolution authorizing issuance and sale of school improvement bonds of the district.
I move that we adopt a resolution to authorizing the issuance and sale of school improvement bonds.
Thank you, Mr. Conchas. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Oropeza. Any discussion?
I just want to say thank you to all of our voters who entrusted the Alhambra Elementary School District to have these bonds, and also want to thank all of those folks who were out there knocking on doors, informing the community about these bonds and overrides in 2017. I know that was one of the things that I was doing in the summer of 2017, is knocking on doors and asking folks to support this. So it's really nice to be here now and see it full circle. And I really look forward to seeing where we go with this. And I want to thank the staff, Ms. Billiou and Scott, for walking myself through this process. And just want to say I really appreciate all of the hard work that has been going into this. Thank you.
EDH, public participation at board meetings. This reinstatement is allowed per policy BGF. Call for a motion that the governing board reinstate suspended policies BEDB and agenda and BEDH, public participation at board meetings.
I move that we approve policy BGF, suspension repeal of this policy. I don't think I'm saying that correctly. That we reinstate suspended policy BEDB agenda and policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Conchas. Do I have a second?
second.
Thank you, Mr. Diocampo. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 H2, first reading policy JLCD, medicines and administering medicines to students. Administration recommends that the governing board approve the first reading of policy GLCD, medicines and administrating medicines to students. Senate Bill 1026 adds modified language to the emergency administration of medications, which has been placed in the policy. I call for a motion that the governing board approve the first reading of policy JLCD, medicines, administering medicines to students.
Call for approval of the first reading of policy JLC, medicines and
Thank you, Mr. Ocampo. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Opeza. Any discussion? All the,
This is coming about because of a change that's come down through legislation.
all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
H3, first reading, policy JLDAC, screening and testing of students, vision screening for children. The Department of Health Services may develop and provide vision screening training to screeners, provide schools with materials necessary for conducting vision screenings, compile school vision screening data, and develop and adopt rules applicable to the vision screening requirements. I call for a motion that the governing board approve the first reading of policy GLDAC, screening, testing of students, vision screening for children.
I move that we approve the first reading of policy JLDAC, screening, testing of students.
Thank you, Mr. Oropeza. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Conchas. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. H4, first reading, policy JLF, reporting child abuse, child protection. Administration recommends that the governing board approve the first reading of policy JLF, reporting child abuse, child protection. HB 2008 has revised ARS 13-3620 pertaining to the duty to report child abuse by a supervisor, stating that if the supervisor or administrator reasonably believes that the report has been made by a person who is required to report, then the supervisor or administrator is not required to report. Call for a motion that the governing board approve the first reading of policy JLF, reporting child abuse, child protection.
That we accept the first reading, policy JLF, reporting child abuse.
Thank you, Mr. Ocampo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Conchas. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. H5, first reading, policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings. Administration recommends that the governing board approve the first reading of policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings. Policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings, has been revised to delete unnecessary language which may be misconstrued to allow content restrictions on speech during public participation. Call for a motion that the governing board approve the first reading of policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings.
I move that we approve the first reading of policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Conchas. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Opeza. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, I1 AESD COVID testing. Call for a motion that the governing board approve the AESD application for certification to implement and conduct COVID testing of students or family members for purposes of ensuring public safety and mitigation of spread of the novel coronavirus, and approve the COVID testing consent form.
Governing board accept the
Thank you, Mr. Ocampo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Conchas. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. J, information items. J1, AESD COVID-related funding plans, Part 2. Ms. Bill Yu will come up and provide information.
Thank you, President O'Neill, Friends, governing board members, and Mr. Islas. In September, we shared with the board funding sources that had been earmarked for education to support COVID-related expenses. The goal of these dollars is to fortify schools as they work to continue providing quality education for students while ensuring a safe and healthy learning environment for everyone. In our first presentation, when referring to COVID-related funding opportunities, we were referring to FEMA, the Enrollment Stability Grant, and the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, or ESSER. Since that time, additional opportunities have transpired. In this presentation, we will revisit FEMA and share opportunities from ESSER that have been presented by the state and taken advantage of by our district. Alhambra continues to be committed to our COVID-related spending goals that we shared in September. We are working to continuing to position our district in such a way that we are eligible for every dollar afforded us. We are also ensuring that multiple funding sources that we're creating, that these multiple funding sources are devoted to creating a safe and healthy learning environment and practices for staff. We also continue to leverage each and every opportunity to its maximum extent while protecting our state funding as much as possible from the impact of COVID, because this stabilizes our budgets. It is important to reassure everyone that this does not mean substitute. We are not spending COVID dollars in lieu of spending state dollars. They are in addition to the state dollars, but we are prioritizing spending that has a lasting impact and addressing immediate needs while making choices that are impacting our students and intended to protect them well into the future. We're also committed to not making these decisions in a vacuum. That's important to us, and we continue to seek input from multiple stakeholders and always plan to transparently communicate how COVID-related funds are being utilized. So in the following slides, we will share a few of the nuances of the funding sources we're currently working with in Alhambra and what Alhambra is earmarking for these sources. Presented in September, the plans are as presented in September, the plans are, or the slides are ordered and the funding opportunities are ordered from most restrictive to least restrictive. The reason for this is because this aligns with Alhambra's thinking and our thought process for using these funds. We want to tap in and exhaust the most restrictive dollars first, saving the most flexible dollars and the dollars with the longest lifespan to be used later. So you will notice with this strategy that you will see similar needs being used, or funding being used for similar needs, different funding sources being used for similar needs. Our district continues the lengthy process to take advantage of FEMA dollars, working with DEMA, which is Arizona's team to support FEMA applications. In addition to our previous requests of FEMA, Alhambra is continuing to seek reimbursement through FEMA for our participation in vaccine clinics, our upcoming clinic, and our future COVID testing. Our state's GEAR plan included one element that applies to elementary schools, which allocated about $20 million for high-needs schools through acceleration academies. The state set the criteria that is listed on the slide for eligibility for each school, and our district was eligible for $375,000. Alhambra's grant was submitted this month, requesting funds, and they will be aligned to support Goal 4, which is our academic recovery plans. This slide shares the second round of COVID funding made available to the states as they support COVID-related educational concerns, commonly referred to as ESSER 2. Regarding ESSER 2, it's important to note that what was allowable under ESSER 1 continues to be allowable under ESSER 2. So ESSER 2 further outlines, they reiterated further items that can be included. These were also These are also allowable in ESSER 1, but there is more clarifying language to make it very clear to districts, because in district planning, it may have been something that was missed. So the items you see listed on that slide are items that were just reiterated to districts that ESSER funding could be eligible for. ESSER funding continues to be our very most flexible source of relief. It's often referred to as CARES money, and school districts are still required to apply for this one-time funding source. The allocations are determined by formula aligned to the district's Title I Part A funds. And what has changed since September is that ESSER has been expanded to multiple rounds, commonly referred to as ESSER 2, and on the horizon, ESSER 3. ESSER covers the broadest scope of needs and has the longest lifespan. The chart shared in our September presentation communicated that Alhambra dedicated these dollars to student iPads, staff to support social distancing, our deep cleaning plan, our PPE plan, support for family connectivity, staff training aligned to support our HTL plan, proportionate share to private schools, and indirect costs. With ESSER 2, our focus is similar. The chart shared, or with ESSER 2, our focus is similar. We are addressing salaries for COVID staffing and increased hours. So you can see within the circle chart, there are 3 areas that are aligned to possibly a staffing category. It was important for me that you understood the subtle distinctions between how each of those staffing decisions were aligned. So salaries for COVID staffing and increased hours, that is extra manpower to support safe and healthy environments. Principals were afforded the opportunity to assess how the healthy traffic light was impacting their campus specifically. They worked with Ms. Melissa Gonzalez and Human Resources to determine where additional manpower was necessary, and ESSER dollars were applied to make that happen for them. Another area of increased staffing that we felt was critical is funding aligned to supporting new staff to address student recruitment and retention, and to continue to allow parents the opportunity to remain in distance learning. So specifically what that means is the guidance that we received that student enrollment was really important and we need to apply staff to that. That is eligible under ESSER. Also, the creation of our AOI, our new online school, that is also allowable. The creation of the school is not necessarily allowable, but the staff for the school is allowable, because what that does is allows our parents to continue to remain in distance learning if they feel that that is best for their family. And then facility improvements. What is listed there, or just ideas of what we have done for facility improvements. We are working on an HVAC upgrade. That is another example of one of the funding choices that is being made that will have an impact long into the future. So not only will students, as a result of COVID, be breathing cleaner and fresher air, future students will also be afforded the same thing. So it's a smart use of these dollars to impact needs now, but also support future needs. We also purchase things like bottle fillers and shade structures for the outside learning spaces and furniture for those spaces. Technology improvements will continue. We're looking at continued support for Wi-Fi. We have a new partnership on the horizon that will bring more reliable Wi-Fi, and we're also involved in the Digital Divide project. And then laptops and device replacements are included in that. There's another staffing benefit that we are looking at that relates to retention and recruitment. We have in draft retention and recruitment stipend for all staff that is related to COVID and the increased everything that COVID has brought to our work. Also, we are looking at supporting the increases that we saw to insurance. Our insurance benefits costs increased, and it is an ESSER allowable expense so that our staff do not have to add that cost to their budget to pay for their insurance benefit increases. So, and then indirect costs, which is always so exciting. Thank you. You probably hear on the horizon that there is ESSER 3. That is not a rumor, that is true. The American Rescue Plan Act, most recently or most often referred to as ESSER 3, is on the horizon. We do not have We have educated guesses with regard to what that funding amounts will be. We do not have specific allocations yet, nor do we have an application to apply yet. But we are keeping our ear to the ground and are poised and ready for that round of funding. So barring any questions, the following slides that you have in your packet are for the benefit of our newer board members. It is the presentation that was provided in September. And barring any questions, that is the information I have for you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bilyeu, for the presentation and the explanations of the funds.
Sure.
Thank you for getting those funds for us. I know they don't just show up in our accounts, so thank you for pursuing them and your team. Sure, we get all that should come our way.
I appreciate that you recognize that because it is through the hard work of our grants team and our business department led by Mr. Huseman and Ms. Conklin that makes that possible. So having a good team behind you puts us in a good position and makes us look really good too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, your next information item, J2, Global Academy of Phoenix update. J3, financial report. And J4, Arizona State testing plan for AESD. I move to K1, comments from.
I thought that we were going to get some booklet on the testing plan.
Good evening, Madam President, governing board members, and Mr. Islas. The flip book that we gave you was already included in previous conversations, and there's one attached to this as well.
Thank you so well.
Sorry, are you on comments and communication? Or are you
I'm
back
the
on?
Arizona
Okay.
State testing.
I want to make sure. Yeah, I had just moved though. I want to make sure I go back to where you were.
Isn't a whole lot that they can compare it to, so there isn't a whole lot to compare it to, so we don't really know that's going to help us in identifying loss anyway, especially down to the individual level. Above that, I wanted to make sure that I appreciate that you looked into the idea of getting kids to school on a Saturday, so we aren't mixing students that are in there. Make sure that we those testing assignments. And I'm going to continue to lobby for the fact that we should not necessarily be responsible for having 10% of our students come in and be reasonable expectations.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Moving to K, comments and communication. K1, comments from the governing board members.
I do have one comment. I'd just like to propose a future agenda item for a board retreat, something that can get us aligned on board rules and doctrine and with each other. If we have a couple, me and Ms. Sanchez, new board members, and I think it would be time well spent and valuable.
Thank you.
Hello. So I had the pleasure of visiting my first campus site, which was Valencia, and I just want to say that it was great. I came out of there with a lot of inspiration, lots of joy, and just lots of respect for all of the work that you all have done in the schools to make sure that that our children are protected, the students are protected, the staff. And so a little bit about Valencia for the community that might be listening is that they have students from 18 different countries who speak over 22 different languages. They also have a vaccination clinic online, a clothing closet, a hygiene bar. They have a social worker. The social worker actually told me about her experience taking some of the parents who didn't know how to ride the bus, actually taking the parents to learn how to use the metro system. And so I just want to say that that's amazing, and that's going above and beyond for our families. They also have a school garden there. The teachers are trauma trained. They have 5 new outdoor classrooms and also instructional assistants to make sure they have smaller class sizes. And so I just want to say that I really appreciated it, and I look forward to visiting more sites. Thank you to the principal, Ms. Faulkner, for hosting me. I also wanted to comment on the Global Academy of Phoenix update. I read in the update that the students are doing service learning, and me and my past professional career, I was the Phoenix College Service Learning Coordinator. And so I love service learning, connecting community service with the classroom. And so I really appreciate that the students have the opportunity to do that and to address issues in their communities and connect it to their curriculum. So I just commend everyone for their work, and also to our principals that are here with us today. I hope that you had a really good first week back, and just want to say thank you all for everything that you do for our learners. And that's it.
I had the great fun of going to Westwood on the first day of school along with Miss Gonzalez. We were in charge of the kindergarten corridor, my favorite age group. And if you tried to help kindergartners find their place where they're supposed to be, say, "What is your name?" And they look at you like, "Oh, I have a name." So you're busy trying to find where they're supposed to go, and believe it or not, you do find where they're supposed to go. So impressed with the way it was organized, the arrows on in the corridors, the close to anybody. That was happening in all schools across the district. I had to go to all of them, so appreciate us said the amount of effort that it took over a short get the schools open and ready for those students to be there. And hey, I don't know, excited. Waiting to get in and get together.
I also want to thank Mr. Landay for the update on GAP, community-based projects. I just thrill me. So I'm really excited that they're doing that. And I enjoyed the little examples of some of what the students had been doing. I also want to thank everyone for the smooth return to school. Please make sure you go back and thank your staffs. I know they did a big job. I thought it was a little easier at our site than I thought it would be, so I hope it was that way for you too. Again, you did a fabulous job. You were prepared. We knew you were going to do fine, and you did, so congratulations. Moving to K2, Governing Board Direction and/or Agenda Item Request.
Okay, I have a request, which was my previous comment, which is why we need a board retreat, because I don't know what I'm doing. So I would like to propose a board agenda item for a retreat, so you guys can teach me something. All right.
Thank you.
We can learn from you.
All right, moving.
how to not do things. You can learn that from me.
Sorry, go ahead.
I know that the governing board president O'Neill France has asked about class sizes in previous meetings, and so that's also a concern for me, especially going into our new school year, to make sure that we're really mitigating the spread of COVID-19 and that we're really looking at what our class sizes are and what we can do as a district to make sure that every classroom is safe for folks and that we're not packing, more than 30 children in one class. So
To say you're being very generous with 30. I would be like 15. Okay. Please do not pack 30 kids in your classrooms, please. Oh, goodness. K3 comments from the superintendent, sorry.
President O'Neill France, members of the board, Alhambra community, thank you for allowing me to come up here and address you this morning. Couple of points of clarification. We did hear from the governor. There was a new executive order and believe he was kind of opening things up. Our district will continue to work on our healthy traffic light protocols. We are going to continue wearing face coverings and masks and until we inform you that we will not. So regardless of what actually came out this morning, we do have our protocols that we are continuing to follow. Second thing that I wanted to report is I believe that Claire Perry, the Executive Director of HR, will be pushing out contracts tomorrow to our staff. It's almost that time of the year to start taking a look at how we will be doing staffing next year. So some bit of information on that. We will give a report at next board meeting regarding our return to OSIP, on-campus in-person learning and distance learning, what those numbers are. You do know that as we move forward into next year, that with your approval, you approved Libby Cohen as the principal of the online school. So there will be some options for our kids to stay online next year, and hopefully that helps a little bit with class sizes throughout the district. We are a district that's built for high class sizes. That's been our formula for many, many years. However, we understand the board's concerned about continuing with safety protocols and keeping the kids as safe as possible, and we'll continue to do that as we move forward. I do want to also thank the governing board for recognizing it may have been Ms. O'Neill France may have been the only governing board member at the time that we where the board approved us to actually go out to our voters on a bond. But there have been some really neat things that we've been able to create for our kids, our students. We've also been able to make some improvements along the way with that bond that we passed at that time. I believe when we passed that bond, we hadn't gone out for a bond in maybe over 20 years in the Alhambra district or something like that. I'm looking back at Scott. So it's been a long time. So I think I appreciate the voters and appreciate the confidence of the board for us to take care of everything. This comment was made earlier, but I want to reiterate how grateful I am and how proud I am of Angela Conklin, Scott Huseman, and Mandy Bilyeu. There is a lot of money to manage, and there are a lot of ideas that are floating all over the place on what we should do to put our district in a really good position now and also maybe in the future. Mandy and I attended a meeting on Monday with 13 other superintendents from the area just to share ideas on what you can do with this money. So there's been a lot of thought that's been put into it. There's been a lot of research. And now, if you remember, this is on top of what their normal job is. So it's been a lot of work, and Angela and Scott and Mandy have done a really good job of keeping us on track, making sure we're planning some things, and creating a really good future for our district. So I appreciate that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eastless. Okay, moving to L, meeting close. L1, next governing board meeting, April 8th, 2021. L2, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Conches. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Oropeza. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.